Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om. This talk or this session is largely inspired by Sri Ramana Maharshi's Upadesa Saram. And of course, the teachings of Sri Narasimha Prabhuji, who is whose words of wisdom has greatly helped me understand this text. At the very beginning, I would like to offer my respects, pranams, and gratitude to the great masters Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj, Sri Prabhuji, and Sri Ramana Maharshi. My gratitude and respects to all the realized masters who has treaded the path on the earth at one time or another. Um, One of the most powerful instruments that we have as a human being is our mind. Um, our mind is so powerful that it's a tool for all creativity. At the same time, it can bind us into a specific object or idea or anything. So, Amrita Bindu Upanishads in the very second stanza says, Mana eva manushyanam karanam bandha moksha yoho. That means the mind itself is a reason for, is a cause for bondage as well as freedom for the human being. That's the very first statement that the Upanishad makes. But the second line is more interesting, and it gives a way out of bondage. What does it say? Bandhaya vishayasaktam muktaha nirvishayam smritam. When the mind is attached to the sense objects, it is bound. When it is detached from the sense objects, it is free. So here is a clue. The mind has a property of being attached, or it also can get detached. Uh, Most of the time, in the transactions of the world, often mind, when it flows outward, attaches itself to some object or another. Um, Look at it this way: when a person sees an object that he desires, now which one is inert and which one is enlivened? The object is inert. For example, if I see a wonderful shirt in the show window of a shop, I like the color, I like the design, and therefore suddenly a desire props up in my mind and to buy that shirt. Now, in the process of seeing which is the inert object and which is the enlivened one, obviously the shirt is an inert object, and our human mind, where the desire props up, is enlivened, because desire can come up or not come up. The very fact that desire comes up in our mind shows that the mind is an enlivened entity. If we look at it a little closely, the object or the shirt cannot get attached to the mind. It is my mind in which the desire props up, goes and attaches to the shirt in the form of a desire to possess the shirt. Isn't it so? So when the mind gets attached to an object, then all the subsequent processes start. I have to buy the shirt. My mind cannot rest till I buy the shirt. Now, I might not have enough finances at that time to buy the shirt, so I must organize it, or I must go inside and inquire. So, all of these things will happen, and the mind will go on its own trip, trying to find out ways and means of wanting to buy the shirt, or ways and means of buying the shirt, or any possessing any object that it has desired. The mind will not rest till that desire is fulfilled, isn't it? Mm. Therefore, if one desire is fulfilled, will the mind rest? Another desire will crop up. So, one desire after another crops up in a series of events in life. Therefore, what the Upanishad is saying is the human being has a very powerful tool, the mind. That mind can either free the human being from the clutches of all bondages, or it can enslave the human being with all the desires and attachments. Now, when we say there is a way out, that means when we detach the mind from the sense objects, the whole the whole scheme of yoga is is based on this, isn't it? Hmm? Now, if we look at essentially the mind, there are twin problems of the mind. There are twin problems. There are two fundamental problems of the mind. One is restlessness. That means when the mind is outward focused, it's seeing the objects of the world, or even looking at its own thoughts and ideas and relationship, which is still a subtle object which has a form. The mind is fundamentally restless. So, restlessness is a fundamental problem that we have with our human mind. What is the second problem? What is the second problem? The second problem is ignorance. Ignorance here is of two kinds. One is ignorance of the world, for example, any subject of the world, secular knowledge. The other is ignorance about my own self, not knowing my own true nature. For example, I might not know some topic in physics. I'm ignorant of electricity or magnetism in the physics chapter. Now I can pick up a book and read about it, or attend a physics class and learn that information. So there is a way to acquire knowledge in terms of adding on. Ignorance of the secular subject is overcome by adding on knowledge of that particular subject. Anything. I don't know how to drive a car. I attend a driving school and learn the skill of driving the car. So I add on the skill of driving a car, which till today I did not have, till yesterday I did not have. So the process of overcoming ignorance of the objects of the world is to add on knowledge about those objects. But can we do the same for ignorance of our own self? then we have to understand what is the ignorance of the self or the lack of self awareness due to, isn't it? So let's address uh, both these issues or situations of the mind. The one is restlessness, and the second is ignorance. Now, if we address only one, restlessness, and ignorance remains, then the problem is still not resolved. Self awareness cannot be established without overcoming the restlessness of the mind. If my mind is jumping here and there, then how can I know who I am? I can't even know what another object is because have a lack of focus, a lack of attention. Therefore, addressing both these questions, addressing the issue of restlessness and addressing the ignorance of my own true nature, both are important if the mind has to be a tool for liberation. Otherwise, we'll be caught up with the affairs of the world, and the affairs of the world are such that sometimes those affairs will give me happiness, and sometimes, many times, those affairs will give me sorrow. If we are okay with the swing of our life between joy and sorrow oscillating every now and then that's okay. We can live with it. But the moment we say, I don't want sorrow, I want happiness, I'm fed up with frustration, I want some peace of mind, then this calls for a deeper investigation into the nature of mind, because it's in the mind that we feel joy and peace. It's in the very same mind that we feel frustration and sorrow. So far, so good. Hmm? So now, what is the antidote for restlessness and ignorance? For restlessness, there is a wonderful technique of yoga that the great sage Patanjali gave us. And for overcoming the ignorance, the antidote for ignorance, we have jnana or self inquiry. So, yoga and jnana are twin tools available at our disposal, quite heavily researched in the past. We don't have to reinvent the wheel today, though, of course, both of these have taken many, many different forms over the centuries and decades. But still, let us explore what what these two will do in terms of actually looking at, settling the bird in the cage. So instead, by the bird in the cage, we mean bird at rest. The bird has two wings. If allowed to fly, it will simply keep flying here and there, but it will not rest. So is the human mind, like the bird. The two wings of the human mind are, one is restlessness and the other is ignorance. And the moment these two flap, what is going to happen? The bird is going to go here and there. The mind will go here and there. Now, what does Patanjali talk about yoga? Normally, it's a common thing to look at one our mind as a bundle of thoughts. Yes, it's a bundle of thoughts, a sequence, a series of thoughts that come one after another. But Yoga Sutra of Patanjali has a very interesting um, not definition, I would say, understanding of the movement of thought, which is in a way the construction of the human mind. Our human mind is nothing but the movement of thoughts. If there is no movement of thoughts, if there is complete silence, where is the mind? When there is complete stillness, where is the mind? There is no mind there, at least for that few moments that the mind is still and silent. Therefore, what does sage Patanjali say about the outcome of thought movement? He classifies it as five essential outcomes. Any thought movement will give us five outcomes. The first one is right perception. The second one is wrong perception. The third one is imagination. Fourth one is memory. And the fifth one is sleep. Experiences may be many, but all of them can be grouped under these five major categories of outcomes. Now, any thought movement will result in one or a combination of these five outcomes. That's what Patanjali is saying here. Vrittayaha panchayaha klishtaha klishtaha pramana viparyaya vikalpa nidra smatayaha. The fifth and sixth shloka of the very first chapter or the section on Samadhipada in Patanjali Yoga Sutra. Now, what does this essentially mean? The mind, when the thoughts move in the mind, it has fivefold effects that either cause conflict, klishta, or aklishtaha, do not cause conflict. So the movement of thoughts can either cause conflict or not cause conflict. Now, what are these five outcomes? Right perception. So, for example, when I see an object, when the eyes see an object, I perceive an apple in front of me, and the apple's image is formed in the brain, and the mind interprets it as apple, as is the object, with a clear thought. That's the right perception. The wrong perception is I see a rope, but I mistake it to be a snake. So that's the wrong perception, isn't it? In fact, another wonderful physical example is I see water on the road at a distance. I think the water is there on a good hot summer afternoon. But what is it? As I go closer, I find it's only a mirage. So I see the input, the senses are giving me a wrong input, and the mind is coming to a wrong conclusion. There are many things that contribute to this wrong perception, but then these are simple ways of understanding it. What is imagination? Imagination is what the mind does to the sense perception without actually paying attention to the facts. For example, I learn of my colleague's birthday party, my friend's birthday party that is to happen later tonight. I find that one of my other friends is invited to that party, but I am not invited. So what is the fact here? There is a birthday party later today, tonight. My friend is invited, but I am not invited. With this information, the mind goes on a trip. Oh, my friend has not invited me, but invited the other friend. He must be mad at me. Let me see. I have done so much for him, but he has not invited me. He doesn't deserve my friendship, my love. So look at what the mind goes on doing with that information. Now, that is a work of fiction, a work of imagination of the mind. There may not be reality at all to what the mind is interpreting that way. Many times it happens to us, isn't it? And the the fourth aspect of thought movement in the mind is memory. And what does Yoga Sutra say about memory? It gives a very simplistic definition. It is not to let go of the sense objects that it has experienced. That is memory. Retaining the experience of the sense objects and not letting it go is memory. Actually, what happens whenever we perceive anything, whether we see, hear, touch, smell, or taste anything, how long does that experience last? Just for a few minutes. Some experiences may last for a couple of hours. Otherwise, all experiences come and go. So, what is the fact about experience? Experience is time bound. It has a life of its own with respect to time. If experiences come to me, then soon it will go. If one experience has gone, then we can be sure that another one will come. So the nature of experience is just coming and going, coming and going. They never stay with us. But what does my mind do? If I like a certain experience, it wants to hold on to it, and that becomes a memory. And there is always a tussle between memory and reality, and therefore it leads to conflict. Hmm? The last one, the fifth outcome of the thought movement is sleep. And what does Patanjali Maharshi say about sleep? It is about non cognition or recognition of any object is sleep. Such a wonderful definition. Hmm? It comes in the later shlokas of Yoga Sutra, in the very first chapter. So essentially, what do we see here? The movement of thoughts can result in knowledge, right knowledge through right perception, wrong knowledge through wrong perception and imagination, conflict through imagination, wrong perception, and memory, and in deep sleep without cognition of happiness. I mean, without cognition of any object, without perception or cognition of any object, which is blankness, it can result in complete stillness or peace of mind. Because, see, in sleep, what is there? I'm not aware of this body. The body is lying on the bed. I'm not aware of the body. Where is the body? No body experience. Where is the world? No experience of the world in sleep. So, non perception, non cognition of objective experience is simply happiness or bliss or peace. So, with these, so thought movement creates these five natural outcomes. Therefore, we can use them. We can use them effectively to actually aid in our progress of self awareness. So, Ramana Maharshi's Upadesa Saram says in the 10th shloka, Hritstale mana swasthatha kriya bhakti yoga bodhascha nischitam. What is the purpose of all yoga, therefore? Because the thought cause oscillations in the mind, thought movement causes all these different outcomes, sometimes desirable, sometimes undesirable. And the human mind's tendency is to hold on to desirable outcomes and run away or show the back to undesirable outcomes. The best solution that even yoga says is chitta vritti nirodha. That means to calm the excursions of the mind, the movement of thoughts in the mind. Chitta vritti to is the oscillations in the mind of the thoughts. Nirodha, to calm down the oscillations of the mind. That means to calm down the thought movements in the mind. Different thoughts move at different speeds with different energies depending on our attachment to those thoughts. But any thought movement comes with an encumbrance, either of happiness or of sorrow. Just because I experience happiness, does it mean it's not an encumbrance? Why is happiness an encumbrance? Experience of happiness. Simply because how long will happiness last? Very short lived. But the mind wants to hold on to it. How long will even the sorrow last? Short lived. Unless the mind holds on to it and doesn't let it go in its natural course. Therefore, both happiness and sorrow are burdens on the mind, according to deeper spiritual truths. Now, according to simple psychology and other what we call life skills, motivational methods, then all of these will be that it's better to be positive than negative. It's better to you know aim for happiness than look at sorrow. Positive thinking, happiness quotient, all of these are there in the realm of life skills and motivational fields. But still, if we go by the nature of the experience of the human heart, we find that neither happiness or sorrow, the happiness that we so were eagerly waiting for, has gone in no time. Therefore, what is what is spirituality saying? The deeper spiritual truth saying. Now, instead of addressing the happiness and sorrow, address the cause of happiness and sorrow, which is the mind. Now, two things: address the restlessness of the mind on one side, address the ignorance of the mind on the other side. So, what is the purpose of all yoga? The purpose of all yoga is to establish the mind in the heart. Now, here, the heart means the root, the place where the thoughts arise from the center of our being, not the physical heart. Why? Because the root cause of the problem is the movement of the thought in the mind. And with the movements come the five outcomes as outlined in Patanjali Yoga Sutra. Right perception, wrong perception, distortion, then memory and sleep. Five basic outcomes of thought movement. All right. So now, therefore, what should we do? The mind, if the mind is at the circumference, at the surface, it will be oscillating from one thought to the other. What is Ramana Maharshi saying here in Upadesa Saram 10th sloka? Any yoga practice that we engage in, karma, kriya, bhakti, jnana yoga, the purpose is to establish the mind in the heart. When the mind rests and in the heart, which is the source of the thought, then what happens to the mind? The mind becomes automatically still and quiet, silent. Therefore, there is no movement of thought. Now, when there is no movement of thought, what happens to the five outcomes of thoughts, thought movement? They are automatically not there. If the cause is addressed, the effect is automatically addressed, isn't it? So, the, the purpose of all yoga is to establish the mind in the heart, or settle the movement of the thoughts in the source of where the into the source where the thoughts arise automatically and go in. Now, the result of such a practice of any yoga, whether we do karma yoga, bhakti yoga, jnana yoga, or kriya yoga, result of that practice is automatically peace and bliss. Why? Because the mind is touching the self or the consciousness in that deep state when the mind is merged with the self. Now, the experience of self is seen as the experience of peace and bliss in meditation or samadhi. Now, does it mean then the next question will arise? Is there no consciousness or self in the other states, waking, dreaming, and sleep? Do I have to always enter into meditation to experience peace and bliss? Now, if I have to experience peace and bliss only in meditation, then it becomes very limiting, isn't it? Now, if that is so, then how long can I sit in meditation in a day? What happens after I get up and go and attend to all the work that I need to do? Is the peace lost? So the next question arises, why am I not able to get the experience of peace and bliss in my normal waking state when I'm interacting with the world? So far, we have taken the path of yoga to understand that the movement of thought has actually five outcomes, and all of these outcomes, they either give us happiness or conflict or no conflict, klishta aklishta. Both of them are to be overcome because the solution is to transcend the mind rather than tame and use the mind selectively. Because any effect, any outcome of the mind is short lived. Now, so far, e- the path of slowing down the mind, the path of all the yogas trying to merge the mind into the self, to enter into samadhi. Samadhi, the word very samadhi means sama plus dhi. Sama plus dhi. Dhi is the intellect, the the source of the thoughts, the field of where the thoughts rises and falls. Now that field, if it is equanimous, if it's in an equanimous state, then that's the state of samadhi. Now, s- all of these practices will enable us to get into a state of samadhi. And Yoga Sutra says there are this can become a natural state by prolonged practice and detachment. Abhyasa and Vairagya are also the recommendations of Patanjali Maharshi in the Yoga Sutras. That means meditation, pranayama cannot be a one time or once in a blue moon affair. We have to do it as a regular practice day after day. Why? Because our mind has a tendency to go outward as soon as it is released from the meditation. Now, Ramana Maharshi also says a beautiful thing there about the the bird with the wings. Now, if we have to get into the nature of the self, if we have to understand how to be able to establish peace and bliss even in the waking state. One way is to regulate the breath to control the mind. Now, if we take the mind with two wings as prana and then the mana, then because of the close connection between the breath and the mind, controlling the breath, regulating the breath will regulate the thoughts in the mind. Now, regulating the thoughts in the mind by meditative practices will also slow down the breath. These are mutually interactive. One affects the other, and the effect can be seen in in bidirectional modes. Now, when we understand that the experience of samadhi also, the peace and bliss, if it gets limited to only the state of meditation, that also imposes a limitation. Then we have to get into what is the nature of self and how can we understand and be established in the self at all times, even when we interact with the world. So the question is, why can't we experience bliss and peace of samadhi in the waking state. Why can't we experience peace and bliss of samadhi or meditation even in the waking state? So, for this, we'll have to go to what consciousness means. What is the definition of consciousness? With consciousness or awareness is also the its power that comes with it. Now, this is not very difficult to understand. Just like with the sun, heat and light come with the sun. The property of heat and light cannot be separated from the sun. Therefore, sun doesn't come alone just as a structure with the light. Heat also comes with it, light also comes with it. Similarly, when consciousness is present, it's present with its inseparable power or energy. Now, what is the definition of consciousness? In order to understand that, consciousness is a few attributes: stillness, solitude, silence, unattached. All these are attributes of consciousness or awareness. Um, it is unattached. It can, for example, if we want to understand what unattached means, the sun reflects equally easily in a dirty pool of water as well as in a clean pond. The reflection in the dirty pool and in a clean pond may vary, but nothing ever happens to the original sunlight. Consciousness is like the original sunlight. It remains unattached whether it reflects in a dirty pool of water or a clean pool of water. Now, it does not by itself engage in anything. It is still and silent, and it is alone, it is single, because it is all encompassing. And now these are some foundational um, things that are said, characteristics that are talked about for consciousness in the spiritual texts. So we can also know that by experience, isn't it? Now, when I'm established in pure consciousness through pranayama, through meditation, then I experience silence and stillness, and I feel the problems do not hit me as at all in that state. Whereas in the waking state, hundreds of problems will bombard me. When the mind gets out of the consciousness into its functional states to respond to the needs of the waking state, needs of the world. Now, when we look at this, then on the other side, if we look at the power of consciousness, now if the consciousness is still and silent, then we cannot explain the existence of the world, because the world is full of dynamic motion and variety. So when we can see the world with all its energies and movements, all its varieties, then we can't explain consciousness through the attributes of stillness, solitude, silence, single, and non-attachment. Therefore, they say that consciousness comes with its consort, its power. So that power is called Shakti or energy. Now, there are three attributes to that energy. One is sattva, which is harmony, rajas, which is dynamism, and tamas, which is inertia. Remember, nothing ever has happened to consciousness when its power expresses in terms of harmony or dynamism or inertia. All happenings are above the surface of the consciousness by the work of its power, dynamic power. Now, what does sattva do? Sattva actually creates wisdom and will. It is jnana and ichcha shakti, wisdom and will. What is rajas? Rajas creates energy and movement. Energy and movement. And tamas creates inertia and lethargy. Now, when we get into a grosser aspect further, then wisdom and will are the functions of the mind. Energy and movement are the functions of vital body or prana, energy body or the prana. And if it further condenses into grosser aspect, then it gives rise to matter and body, which is the tamasic aspect or the lethargy. And why do we say so? We can see that um, uh, if you see that um, if it is only the body by itself, it will remain the very first law of Newton's laws of motion says a body remains at rest or continues to be in motion unless acted upon by an external force which tends to change its state. So if it's an inert matter or the body, it will oppose all changes. In order to change the body, even move the body from one point to another, you will need prana, which is the energy of the energy body, and also the will, the power of the will to move the body. On a cold December morning, we would not like to get up from the bed and go to work, isn't it? So we need, it will continue, the body will continue to remain on the bed unless I mobilize my pranic energies and also I mobilize the power of my will. That's why the grossest of the power is tamas, which is the body and matter that reflects as inertia and lethargy. Dynamism of the power is rajas, which reflects as energy and movement, both in the individual body and in the world. And the sattvic aspect, the harmony aspect, is is the mind in the in the individual and the universal mind in in the cosmos, which reflects as wisdom and will in the human being. Now, if if we have to address the nature of mind, the oscillation of the mind, we need to get a proper understanding of consciousness and its power, because mind is an outcome of the power of consciousness. And the power of consciousness is Shakti or the energy. the nature's forces. Now, the body and the mind are the part of nature, part of creation, nature. How do we say that? The body, when it comes to the end of life, is either buried or burnt, and it goes into the five elemental nature, which is the element of earth, water, air, fire, and space. So does the mind actually get merged into the universal mind. So the body and mind are a part of nature. S Therefore, if we have to go back, when the only way that the mind can be stilled, even in the waking state, not just in the meditation, while in meditation, is to understand that the mind arises from the power of consciousness, which was originally still as pure consciousness. Pure consciousness is absolutely still. All movements happen because of the power of consciousness. And that power is called Maya Shakti. So it's the Maya Shakti that causes movement, that creates variety, that actually engages the mind with the power of will and creates, and also creates jnana or wisdom and ignorance. Now, therefore, if we try to actually only harness the power of mind through breath control or through meditation, then what are we doing? We are acting only in the realm of the power of Maya. We are not touching our original true nature, which is consciousness. Therefore, we have to shift to jnana, which is to remove the ignorance of the mind. When does the mind oscillate? When does the mind engage in a lot of movement? When it starts associating with the body, isn't it? A simple example is when we get up in the morning, we have to go to work. Oh, I'm late to work. So the mind has identified with the body so much that it thinks that the task is everything. Not that the task must not be done, but a strong identification of the with the body will actually forget its source, which is consciousness. Where did the mind arise from in the original place? From consciousness. Finally, when the job is done and when we rest at night, we in deep sleep, where will the mind go and merge into its source consciousness? Or when we engage in different types of yogas, karma, bhakti, kriya, and jnana yoga, through various practices, where will the mind go and rest, oscillating mind go and rest during the practice if the practice is deep? Again, back to its source consciousness. So, when we understand that the source of the mind, the home of the mind is consciousness, the silent mind is not different from its parent, which is consciousness, then we will be able to look at things objectively. Otherwise, we will be completely identified with the objects of the world or the instruments of perception and cognition. The body, the sense organs, and the mind. Ramana Maharshi says in the next sloka in Upadesa Saram that when we go and actually trap, when we engage in deep breathing technique, the automatically the mind is thoughts of the minds are regulated and peace establishes. The prana, which is the energy, and the mind, which has the thoughts, both are likened to the two wings of the bird. So if you hold one wing of the bird, prana, through breathing, then the mind can be regulated. If you hold the other wing of the bird, which is the mind, the thoughts of the mind, through slowing down the thoughts through meditation or japa or any of the spiritual practices, then pranic regulation also happens. So, because of this, the bird that is there, which is the mind, will actually come and rest. Otherwise, it will tend to flap its wings and fly. The mind of the bird, which which is naturally to flap its wings, will keep flapping. So, what is the nature of the bird is to flap its wings. So, when the mind is active, it will flap its two wings. Both the mind and the breath are going to be active. So that he's saying is like the bird in the cage to arrest the movement of the mind. But then understanding that the mind, the source of the mind is itself consciousness, is jnana or wisdom. Now, how do we get to that point? That will be the question. There are two statements here: I am the body and I am not the body. Um, the understanding, even when I feel that I am the body, then I am completely identified with the body. Now, when I feel I am not the body, for example, how do we say that? That when we observe that the body is ever changing, but I observe the body of my childhood has changed in youth, and the body that I had in youth is no longer available in the middle age. And now in in the elderly phase of my life, the body has changed further. Its capabilities, its posture, its energy, everything has changed over time. But I still feel I am Vasu. Therefore, as a person, I can say, as the recognition, as a recognizer of the changes in the body, I can confidently say that I am not the body, because when the body has changed, I don't feel I have changed. What do I say? My body has changed. My body has grown. My body has shrunk. My body has had the illness. Therefore, I am not the body is a recognition as a first step. But when I say I am the body, I'm completely identified with the body. When I'm detached from the body by saying I'm not the body, what happens when when I'm not attached to the body? Has the body disappeared? Has I am disappeared? I am is the sense of feeling that I exist. So, in order to recognize that I am the body or I am not the body, I must be present, isn't it? So, I am is the foundation, I am is the seer, and the body is the seen. Therefore, when we negate through understanding that I am not the body, it doesn't mean the body will disappear. Neither will it mean that I, as the witness of the body, I am as the witness of the body, will disappear. The recognition that I am not the body is, is not the death of the body, nor the death of the witness, nor the annihilation of the witness. Because both the witness must be present to say that the body is changing. This body is ever changing and I am constant. So what has happened here, even in this recognition that I am not the body, there is a split between I am and the body. There is a gap. Though, of course, this leads to a sense of stability and calmness in the way I see things in the world. For example, if I'm too attached to my car, then a small dent in the car, if I'm too identified with the car, then a small dent or a scratch in the car, I will get very upset. Now, if I say this is a car and this is me, I'm separate, I'm not the car, then what will happen? What action needs to be taken for the scratch or the dent? I will still take it, but I will not be disturbed by the scratch or the dent. So is it with the recognition that I am not the body. I am the body is a complete identification with the body, like the identification with my car. I am not the body is a disidentification from the body, like the disidentification from my car. So I am not the body gives me a sense of stability, a sense of calmness, a sense of proportion to the whole thing, a sense of objectivity to the situation. What is Vedanta talking about? Just shift the attention from observing the objects of the world or the body to just saying, recognizing the seer of the body or the seer of the world. So from object awareness, we move to self awareness. In that case, what happens? What I am will start revealing, who I am will start revealing in the depths of that silence without words. If there is an answer to who am I, then it's still from an objective answer from the realm of the mind. But then when we say, I am not the body, I am not the mind, I am not the intellect, therefore, from I am not the body, from the focus of the body, who am I? Paying attention to my true nature will actually establish my, the mind in its own true nature. The oscillations of the mind, the disturbances of the mind will automatically come to a halt. Now, from that position, this is why we are saying negation of the body does not mean falsehood of the body. The body continues to exist. I continue to live as a witness, and the witness continues to be there. But there is a clear recognition that I am untouched, independent witness, undisturbed, unattached witness as I am, and the body is my instrument. Now, from this position, if I have to go to a shop and buy groceries, then the work will be done. The instruments of I am, which is the body, mind, and intellect, will continue to perform their functions, but now being powered by the witness, not by the mind, which is egoistic. Powered, if it's powered by the mind, the body and the mind will be actually subject to likes and dislikes. If it's powered by witness, it will be it will actually be functioning uh, in the realm of wisdom. That means whatever is required at that time for that activity, there will be a smooth flow of energy, will, and prana to the activity that needs to be done. I can see the body in action from the position of witness. I can see the body resting from the position of witness. Therefore, when I see the body acting, and I am not the body, what is the position? What is the understanding? I am not the doer. I can see the mind disturbed or the mind calm from the position of witness. But I know I am not the mind. So, in that case, what is the understanding? I am not the experiencer. From the position of witness again, I know sometimes some subjects I understand through the intellect. The intellect does the analysis and understands a few things. It has not understood a few things. So, still, then from the position of witness, it is able to see the intellect, the things that the intellect has understood, the things that the intellect is still ignorant about. But it knows it is not the intellect. Therefore, from that position of the witness, who am I? I am not even the knower. So I am not the doer. I am not the experiencer. I am not the knower. And this can come about only and only from the position of unattached witness. Even while living in this body and engaging in the world. That is samadhi while, while sitting, while standing, while walking, while talking, while sleeping. And the word Vedanta uses for such a samadhi is sahaja samadhi or jnana samadhi. In this case, the effect of samadhi, which is peace and bliss, is not limited to the practice of samadhi only, but in every act of life engaging in the world. So the instruments become very effective being powered by the witness rather than being subjugated by the ego. So, if we go back to the original question, mind has two problems, restlessness and ignorance. Restlessness is addressed by yoga, like the two wings of the bird, controlling the prana or the breath and controlling the mind in meditation. Then the mind gets restful. But that is while in samadhi. But when we step out of the practice, out of samadhi practice, then the mind gets back to its old habits. Then the next step is, okay, I understand the root of the mind, which is consciousness, and the mind has come up, has been born, quote unquote, born, so to say, from the power of consciousness, but the consciousness is ever still and silent. And that Maya Shakti is causing activity, variety, and intelligence, sattva, rajas, and tamas. Then, when we understand that as the source, I am the witness, but I am not the body. Therefore, I no longer identify with doership, experiencership, or knowership, knowledge. Then I am ever free, quiet, steady, calm, peaceful, even while I actively engage in life. This is Sahaja Samadhi. So both are needed to harness the power of the mind and body through yoga and to understand the nature of body, mind, and its source, which is the consciousness through jnana. Both the the yoga will prepare us for proper establishment of the wisdom, and the wisdom will enable us to be in a state of samadhi even in the waking state. May all beings be happy. Thank you for your patient listening. I offer my pranams and gratitude to all the realized masters and my teacher Sri Prabhuji, who's guiding me on the path of self-inquiry, to Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj, to Sri Ramana Maharshi, and also to the great sage Patanjali, whose work Yoga Sutras I drew a lot of inspiration for this sharing. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.